Make sure y'all stay on point with
The Puncher's Point. You, right over there, who's looking at us through the screen. Do you love Mexican fights? Do you like Mexican boxing fights? Well, if so, we got one for you right here. Emanuel Navarrete versus Oscar Valdez. Now, hold up. Y'all are saying, well, this fight already happened. So why are you guys talking old news? We're talking about part two. See, let me give you all a little bit of a recap. These two went to war in the first fight. And in the first fight, they gave the decision to Emanuel Navarrete. Well, now we're about to get the rematch for the WBO Super Featherweight Championship. Now, this was one of our recommended fights. That's why y'all won't see a announcement video. But we figured it was important enough to cover. Plus, boxing's been a little bit slow. So we figured we might as well touch up on this fight. Emanuel Navarrete versus Oscar Valdez. Now, originally, these two, like I said, they went to war in the first fight, and Navarrete picked up the win. However, there were some things that you could pick apart from each fighter. And on top of that, if you go back and you're looking at the projection that their careers have been in so far, you kind of start to question, well, what's going to happen in the rematch? You know, why is this rematch so important in a 130-pound division that as of right now, it's kind of steaming up a little bit after O'Shaquie Foster's win over Robeson Conceição. So, with that being said, let's get straight to the breakdown of Emanuel Navarrete. We're going to start off with the winner of the first fight. So, Breezy, I'm going to have you start off with your strengths and weaknesses for Emanuel Navarrete.
I've never seen somebody throw punches like he throw punches. First of all, can we just say for somebody that has long arms, no Diddy, all right, for somebody that has long arms, you would think he would like to fight on the outside. You would think. No, this guy likes to fight in the inside. And the old saying goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Now, he's had a lot of success in his fights. And matter of fact, he's gotten a long way with fighting that way. Y'all, he fights in the inside, but for somebody with long arms, he throws them by his sides. And I'm kind of concerned about that. Because it's like, although they do have power, he does have power in both of his hands, he does have combinations. But there's always a but to it. When you're throwing punches at a certain angle, and for you to be a certain length with a certain kind of range to throw that at, I hope he look. Yes, he won the first fight. Cool. But can we just have a brief reminder of who Oscar Valdez is? You don't want to throw those kind of punches with somebody like Oscar Valdez, who has a short counter punching. When I mean Oscar Valdez counter punches, he throws short shots, and when he throws those short shots, a lot of those times, those short shots that he throws are very powerful. So what I will say is this: he keeps his hands to his side, and he has his chin wide open in the air. Why the hell does he does that? I don't know. He leave all this open. And I don't, and like I said, it's by the grace of God that he's gotten this far without taking too much damage. And I guess because he's a longer and lengthy fighter. But at the same time, though, the inside game is kind of crucial too, because he's taking shots that he doesn't really need to take. But as far as his strengths, though, he's very powerful. He's got powerful combinations too. He can counter punch you, and in ways, into some sort, these guys are alike in a way. Not all the way, but they're very similar in a way. And because they is, that's what makes this rematch more anticipating than the first. It's because it's so much that can be picked up and learned from both fighters. But as far as the breakdown, I say Emanuel Navarrete, he's a long fighter. I think he has a better chances fighting on the outside because of his range and because of his long arms. I think if he keeps a jab, I think if he uses his jab, he'll be okay. I do like his jab. He does have a jab. It's just you don't really see it too much because he's so focused on being in the inside, because that's how he get a lot of his stoppages and knockouts, because he has the power to do it. But at the same time, like I said, I'm concerned too, because in the inside too, he's getting caught with shots. He's getting hit with shots that he shouldn't be taking. But on the grand scheme of things too, he does have that pressure. Because he does have that pressure, he's able to do that. So that'll be my breakdown for Emanuel Navarrete.
Emanuel Navarrete, I'm gonna start off with this. I'm gonna start off by kind of following off on a point that Breezy made originally. I don't think I've ever seen a guy with so much punch output in my life. I mean, this guy never stops swinging at all. Like he could get hit, he could get hit with a kitchen sink, and this guy will stop swinging. Actually, there was a fight, I believe it was against Wilson. Um, I think it was Liam Wilson, the guy's name, and he hurt his hand, and you could see him shaking his hand, and he's still throwing with that same exact hand. He will not stop for nothing, and that's what made him so dominant. Is because yeah, there's guys who swing a lot, but not to the effect of Navarrete. Navarrete's whole game plan is I'm gonna keep on swinging from round 1 to round 12. You can hit me with anything you want. I'm gonna still come forward. And the truth is, when he does that, he pushes these guys up against the ropes. He pushes them back. He's constantly the dominant fighter. Now, overall, what I will say as well is he's got a mean uppercut, and on top of that, it's not just him throwing like with the left and the right and the left and the right. It's not the same pattern. This guy will hit you with an uppercut. He can start off with a jab. He can start off going to the body. But the one thing about Navarrete is he wants to target your body. He will target your body. He will go onto the inside. There's no other way to explain it. And I think Navarrete does a great job of draining his opponents. You know, he has that Mexican style, that Mexican fight style, but at the same time, Navarrete's pressure is unlike anybody I've ever seen. And that was a proof and a testament to the Oscar Valdez fight. You see, before, we thought that in order to beat Oscar Valdez, you had to be somebody like a Shakur Stevenson, kind of hit him with some combinations, counterpunch, and move out the way. Navarrete showed that you could pressure him and out pressure him as well. And to out pressure somebody like Oscar Valdez is insane because that's all Oscar Valdez ever does is pressure. So the fact that Navarrete was able to keep moving forward and keep on pushing Oscar Valdez and bullying him for that entire fight, it's absolutely insane. Now, Breezy mentioned his weaknesses. He leaves his chin wide open. He has a wide stance. You know, footwork might not be that great. However, I think his footwork is underrated. And the reason why is because even though he doesn't have like the Shakur Stevenson footwork or the Lomachenko footwork, you know, he's not that type of guy to cut angles. What Navarrete's really good at is he's good at kind of getting out of space when needed. So what I mean by that is if you go back and look at his fights, he's very good at kind of backing up and kind of luring opponents in as well. There's been times where he's kind of like walked back a little bit and opponents try to chase him down and they just couldn't get to him, you know? And Navarrete said one thing before. He said, everybody questions my defense. He goes, but explain to me how I'm never marked up in any of my fights. And it's a point. It's a point right there. And here's my reasoning to it. Because nobody yet has been able to actually piece up Navarrete. And the reason why is not because of defense, in my opinion. This is where I disagree with him. It's because his punch output is so large that his opponents don't have the same opportunity or the same chance to defeat him. His offense and his defense are literally the same. His defense is his offense. That's what it is. And here's the thing, if there's a guy constantly coming after you, when do you have the time to even try to land punches? And here's the answer to that. Counter punching is the key to beating Navarrete. You want an example? Berinchyk. Berinchyk did that. He kept hitting him with the jab. He kept basically putting his momentum at a halt. And basically with Berinchyk, he was moving around him too. He wasn't moving away from him. He was moving around him. And Navarrete just didn't have the trigger to come at Berinchyk the way he would with everybody else. Berinchyk did a very good job of using that like Ukrainian style to kind of confuse Navarrete and to kind of move box circles around him. So I think one of his weaknesses is if you can find an opponent who's able to move around Navarrete and is able to cut angles, somebody like a Berinchyk, which Oscar Valdez is not. I feel like that's one good way to beat him. Another good way to beat him is you got to counterpunch him. You have to counterpunch him. Again, it's like bull with the matador. You have to you got to let him come forward, and when he comes forward, you got to counterpunch him. You got to give him. He's going to keep on coming forward for 12 rounds. You got to counterpunch him for 12 rounds. That is how you beat Navarrete. And Navarrete to me is like Oscar Valdez 2.0, in my opinion. You know, I want to give a different like sports analogy. In tennis, there is a guy named Rafael Nadal who just retired. Shout out to Rafael Nadal. He had a legendary career, but there was a younger guy named Carlos Alcaraz who's coming in. Carlos Alcaraz is Rafael Nadal 2.0, according to everybody. Well, Navarrete is Oscar Valdez 2.0. And so Oscar Valdez, he had a war with Conceição. He had early success against Conceição, and then Conceição basically just kept hitting him with 1-2s and counterpunching him. So overall, I do think that in order to beat Emanuel Navarrete, you got to counterpunch him. You got to hit him with some jabs. You got to hit him with some 1-2 punch combinations. And when he comes forward, you got to give him a reason to, you got to give him a reason to basically think twice and to confuse him. I think and I'm gonna go back to what Oscar Valdez did a little bit later to kind of have some success against Navarrete in the first fight and how he can use that towards the second fight. But overall, I think counterpunching is the key. I feel like there's certain counterpunches that can expose Navarrete. There's certain punches that can expose Navarrete. But I feel like with Navarrete, if you keep on using your jab, your 1-2 punch combinations, and you just counterpunch him, I feel like you can beat him. But the problem is his output is so high that his opponents don't have a chance to even do that. So that would be basically my breakdown on Emanuel Navarrete. Now, let's get straight to Oscar Valdez. Obviously, Oscar Valdez has had a good, accomplished career. He's had a little bit of marks on his career as well. Obviously, we know about the testing positive for PEDs in the past and everything like that. But let's move on from that right now, and let's talk about Oscar Valdez right now as a fighter. Breezy, give me your strengths and your weaknesses for Oscar Valdez.
Oscar Valdez, probably one of the most underrated, harder hitters at that division. I know he had the whole PED situation, but I think before that time came up, a lot of people don't realize how much Oscar Valdez was putting guys on the canvas. Now, y'all all remember his most famous highlight KO over Miguel Berchelt. And just so y'all know, that all plays a factor. I'm kind of piggybacking on what Mario said about the counter punching. That kind of piggies back onto what we were saying about the counter punching. Oscar Valdez has that. And I don't think a lot of people realize Oscar Valdez has fast hooks. He's got power in his left. He's got power in his right. He can hit you with either hook. And the thing about it is, too, Oscar Valdez is like a more calculated. He's like a more accurate, timed version of Navarrete, and Oscar Valdez, when I watch his fights, he's putting his punches together. He's putting his combinations together. As far as him letting those punches go, as far as him catching you, backing you up, and just making it very hard to. He does go to the body a lot, and that's part of that basic hit styles I learned. They're not only just in the pocket just to bang with you, they're trying to break you down. And what I've learned from Oscar Valdez is that if he's not going to fight you using your jab, he's not going to back you up with the jab. He's going to go on the inside, and he's going to catch you with those shots. And if you think you're going to get in the ring with him, and you're just going to run up to him, you're just going to throw anything at him, you're going to get KO'd, as seen in many of his fights. Now, the thing about Oscar Valdez, and I remember there was a time and point before he even fought Shakur Stevenson, people kept asking who would have won that fight out of him and Shakur. And I told people Shakur would win. And some people try to play it as, oh, you're just black picking a black fighter. He typical statement, right? But when I watch one of Oscar Valdez fights, I say this has nothing to do more so with race. But from what I've realized, Oscar Valdez has a problem with boxers who can move. Now, I feel like this is something that's typically seen within the Eddie Reynoso camp. A lot of fighters that come out of this camp, they don't have the best footwork. And what I've learned is, we've seen it down the line, Ryan Garcia, Canelo, now Valdez. What I've learned is that if you can move and box, you give all kinds of trouble for Valdez. And when the moment they announced Shakur versus Valdez, I said, okay, Shakur got this in the bag because he can move and box. If you can press, if you try to charge up to Valdez, you're playing into Valdez's game. If you try to stand in the pocket with Valdez all night, you're playing into Valdez's fight game. But if you can move, if you can fight on the back foot, if you can use your angles too, and you can jab, and you can go to your body too, and you have a nice head movement on top of that, you present all kinds of problems and troubles for Valdez. So the problem with Valdez, the weakness of Valdez is that, and where does it help too? He's not the shortest fighter, but he's also not the tallest fighter. If you notice the Shakur fight, it was a much height difference in Valdez and Shakur. Now with Navarrete, I believe they might be about not too far from apart, maybe the same height. But I feel like that in order for Valdez to win this fight, he's going to have to make sure that he keeps Navarrete in his range. If Navarrete gets out of his range for just one split second, or better yet, if he gets out of his range for one round or even more than that, Navarrete is going to get comfortable and he's going to get adjusted, and then he's going to start trying to apply pressure on Valdez, which will cause Valdez to kind of like, in a way, want to retaliate. He's going to try to throw those punches too. But what did Mario just say too? With Navarrete, his punch output is insane. So if Valdez can't counterpunch that, if he can't really necessarily negate to what Navarrete is throwing, how is he going to counterpunch him? Of course, obviously the obvious would be because he leaves his face open. But at the same time, though, if Navarrete is constantly using his offense as defense too, he's going to have to adjust to that too. So that would really be my breakdown for Oscar Valdez.
So for me, Oscar Valdez got a lot of similar strengths to Navarrete. Oscar, you mentioned it earlier. He's got very good short hooks. I mean, those short hooks on the inside, they're very, very dangerous, And Oscar Valdez is that type of guy who can basically bang with all of them. Another thing about Oscar Valdez, he's got a good chin. I know Shakur knocked him down in one of those fights, but he's got a good chin. I mean, Oscar Valdez, he ain't getting knocked out left and right, And overall, Oscar Valdez can take a punch. And that's what makes Oscar Valdez such a fun fighter to watch, is that he could take those punches and he can keep on delivering. It's the same thing with Navarrete. Navarrete can do the same thing. He can take those punches and keep on delivering. Oscar Valdez is a very good body puncher. And at the same time, there's moments where Oscar Valdez is a good boxer as well. But the problem is Oscar Valdez is so comfortable on the inside that that's all we see. But Oscar Valdez, I mean, you give him the chance, he's got some good head movement. If you go back and watch some of his fights, he's got some good counter punching. Oscar Valdez isn't no slouch. You know what I'm saying? He could be a good boxer when he needs to. When he tried that effect with Shakur, but the difference was Shakur's foot movement, like Breezy said, was just too much. And I feel like with Oscar Valdez in a lot of his fights, when he throws a punch with meaning. The thing is, with Oscar Valdez, he's over every single punch he throws, he's throwing it to not get points. He's throwing it to knock your ass out. And Oscar Valdez does a lot of damage on a lot of opponents. And if you go back and you look at his resume, I mean, he's got a good resume. And on top of that, those fighters that he's fought, he's broken down a lot of them. Now, as far as the weaknesses with Oscar Valdez, you could say his weakness is obviously guys who can move, like Breezy said, which of course Steven said, well, if that's the case, well, how did Navarrete beat him? Navarrete doesn't have footwork like Shakur Stevenson, you know what I'm saying? He's not that type of boxer like Shakur Stevenson, so how did Navarrete beat him? And here's the answer. There's another way to beat Valdez, and you have to out-pressure him, and not many guys can do that, but Navarrete did it in the first fight. Navarrete showed that he was the young man, he was the young bull, and his time has came. And that's credit to Navarrete. This was around the time Navarrete looked like he couldn't be stopped. What happened? Well, Navarrete goes into the ring with Conceição, and it ends up becoming a draw. And then he goes into the ring with Berinchyk, and he loses. That's his last two fights. Now, if I took anything from those two fights, Navarrete is pretty beatable. All you have to do is counterpunch him. And there were moments in that fight where Oscar Valdez counterpunched him. But what was the problem? Well, you're on the ropes and you're doing it out of survival. You're not doing it out of choice. That's the truth. When his back was on the ropes, he's counterpunching Navarrete to kind of stay alive. He's not counterpunching him in the middle of this ring. Oscar Valdez, in order to win this fight, is going to have to stay in the middle of that ring. Let Navarrete control the pace. Let him come forward. You want that. Every single time Navarrete fights, all the ways he fought, you want him to come forward at the same exact way. Because when he comes forward, what Valdez needs to do is hit him with that left hook. That left check hook was hitting all night. And Valdez did not use it the way he wants to. You hit him with a left check hook and you basically cut the angle on him, then it becomes your fight. Valdez needs to take the momentum that Navarrete is going to present to him and use it to his advantage. That's what Oscar Valdez is going to have to do to win this fight. And that's what he didn't do the first fight. The first fight, he just let him back him up, and they just basically turned it into a brawl. Valdez, because he's so used to being the dominant fighter on the inside, was like, well, we could just brawl on the inside all night. That did not work. What you have to do is counterpunch and then use that momentum to take out Navarrete. Now, the other weaknesses with Valdez is I do believe that it's going to be tough to do that because of the reach of Navarrete. However, to get around that reach, I think he's going to have to target that body. That body's right there for the taking. You know what I'm saying? Again, it's a wide stance. It's not like Navarrete is a defensive master. Yeah, he doesn't take that much damage, but at the same time, that body is wide open. And so I believe that Oscar Valdez is going to have to target that body as well. Oscar Valdez is going to have to be versatile. He's going to have to counterpunch. And on top of that, he's going to have to be more of a boxer this fight than a puncher. And that is how he's going to win this fight. So, with that being said, you go to the betting odds. Navarrete is a minus 250 favorite. Oscar Valdez is a plus 200 underdog. The most likely outcome that everybody has is Emanuel Navarrete by unanimous decision or decision, etc. Now, with that being said, Breezy, we're going to go to predictions. Oscar Valdez, Emanuel Navarrete, 2. Who you got winning?
I think Emanuel Navarrete will take it by decision again. I don't know why, but it seemed like ever since Valdez had that fight with Conceição, which a lot of people felt was close and controversial, I think it's like a lot of people is caught on to Valdez flaws and they're now exploiting them. And because now they're exploiting them now, it's kind of like maybe he doesn't look how he did against those other fighters because they wasn't able to exploit those flaws. They wasn't able to expose those holes. And I think since now, especially since he got in there with Conceição, he's got in there with Shakur, then he was in there with Navarrete. So it's like now it's like those holes are more open and more flawed and more out there. So it's like when you're able to exploit those holes and those flaws and whatnot, it's like the fighter that we saw KO Miguel Berchelt is not the fighter that we're necessarily seeing right now. And it doesn't also appears to be the same either. So I do think there is some kind of decline too. Not saying that he can't win the fight, not saying that it's impossible because it's not impossible. And I'm not saying he can't win the fight because he more solely can. But what I'm saying is on a skillful base level and whatnot, unless Oscar Valdez decides to go in there and play stealth mode and wait for Navarrete to throw something crazy and catch him, it's gonna be Navarrete decision, unanimous again. But y'all know how Top Rank likes to do these things. I'm going to say this. I'm not saying this is my prediction, but I'm going to say this. Don't be surprised if the fight is close and they do give it to Valdez, so they could do a trilogy. Don't be surprised. I'm just going to say that. But I do have Navarrete by unanimous decision. But don't be surprised.
I'm going to give you a surprise. I think Valdez takes the second fight. I'm giving this fight to Oscar Valdez. And the reason why is because I'm going back and I'm looking at the Valdez that fought Liam just recently and how he TKO'd him in the 7th round. Now, Liam is not Navarrete. And they both fought. And Liam fought both Navarrete and Valdez, and he lost to both of them. However, the difference is with Oscar Valdez showed me something in that fight that he didn't show in the Navarrete fight. And that was the fight right after the Navarrete fight. And that was how he was able to counterpunch and how he was able to box. There were times where he was in the inside and brawl, yes. But at the same time, Oscar Valdez also made it a statement that he was going to go in there and box. And that's the Oscar Valdez that I expect in this fight. If he goes in there and he boxes and he relies on that counterpunching that Oscar Valdez is so great at, the same counterpunching that knocked out Berchelt and basically gave him knockout of the year. If he relies on that counterpunching, he will beat Navarrete. And don't be surprised if you see Navarrete on the canvas. I'm not saying he's going to knock him out. Don't be surprised you see a knockdown at least once in this fight. But I'm going to go Oscar Valdez by majority decision. I'm going to say that. Oscar Valdez by majority decision. One judge is going to have it a draw. And overall, I think they're going to give it to Oscar. I think they're going to give it to Oscar Valdez, and I think he's going to earn it. And then we're going to see a true third fight. And on top of that, this is Oscar Valdez's third straight fight in Arizona. So overall, I'm excited to see it. You know what I'm saying? Again, it's going to be December 7th, Arizona for the WBO Super Featherweight Championship. And the Super Featherweight division is slowly heating up, and I can't wait to see what happens. But overall, Oscar Valdez and Navarrete, you're going to get a good fight. I mean, you're going to get a true classic Mexican boxing fight. And those Mexican boxing fights are some of the most exciting fights that we have seen in boxing history. So I cannot wait. But overall, you're going to get a great fight. And I'm super excited. And overall, they're going to also have on the co-main event another championship fight, another rematch championship fight. So I can't wait. It's going to be a good card for Top Rank. So hopefully they, do it justice and they don't pull some Top Rank BS and give it to the wrong winner or rob somebody, stop a fight early, nothing like that. So you know what? We're going to be right back here after the fight. And on top of that, we're going to be right back right after that episode or right before that episode, you never know. We're gonna have 2 fights that day. Don't forget about Liam Paro versus Richardson Hitchens. That's gonna be a very, very good fight. And it's going to be a really good day for boxing on December 7th. So make sure y'all tune in. And with that being said, we're going to let y'all know. Make sure y'all tune into the podcast, the YouTube, and everything like that. We keep on dropping banger after banger after banger after banger. And I'm telling y'all who are not watching, y'all better tune in because these are bangers and bangers and bangers. And y'all are just missing them. And y'all are basically missing the new wave of boxing media. So with that being said, please do us a favor and do yourselves a favor and stay on point with the Puncher's Point. What's up, y'all? If y'all love this episode, make sure y'all subscribe. You hit that notifications button and also take a look at the recent episodes that we made before this. Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.